Welcome back, everyone. Happy New Year. Thank you so much for joining us again on Astrology Today with Jeff Harman. I'm Ella, Jeff's assistant. And today, Jeff is going into Mars, Mercury, and Musk. Of course, we're referring to Elon Musk, since he's such a big player in everything that's going on in the world right now, probably more than we actually know. And Mars, of course, is going to go direct soon. And Mercury, of course, just went retrograde, but is going to be going direct pretty soon. So Jeff's going to go into all of that and let us know what's going on.
Well, thank you. I would tell you this, and you covered it pretty good there. You see, we've got Mars retrograde. It has been retrograde ever since October, right before the midterm elections, which, it's been a little bit of a dicey time. Well, here's the interesting thing. Mars is slowing down real slowly, and it's coming to a stop here. And it's actually going to go direct late in the afternoon on the 13th, or actually on the 12th of January. So it's right around 12:56 Pacific time. It'll be like around 3 or 4 o'clock in the East Coast. So depending on where you are in the world, extrapolate. But this is important. Why? Because it's actually happening in the United States, Earth trine, and by March, and of course we got a lot of stuff going on this month. We got the House changing, we got the musical chairs going on for the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, all this other stuff. And also we've got, most importantly, Elon Musk doing another Twitter dump. And even though he's retired, he's really not retired, Mr. Fauci, is he? So it's going to be interesting to see all the stuff that gets dumped and also what comes out. I think there's going to be a lot of fire over this. I really do. Once the House thing settles down, I don't think it's going to settle down right away. I don't know if McCarthy's going to get in. I haven't really looked at that too closely, but I do know the musical chairs looks like it's going to go on a little while. So the bottom line is this, is that not only is Mars stationing and going direct, we also got Mercury going into the sun very close to the full moon. The full moon's right on the 7th of this month, which always creates a lot of tension. And I had mentioned in the Mercury retrograde spot that we just did, how there's a lot of powerful changes going on with the Mercury retrograde's energy as it goes into the sun. It's moving a lunar mansion, which is much more fire orientated, which should bring a lot of action to the scene here in the world, and especially in the United States political game, which you would expect with all that's going on. So that's all happening as Mercury goes Cassimi. And Cassimi, I just want to define that, really means that Mercury's going into the eye of the sun. And there's kind of a refocusing energy about that. It's really cool. It like sharpens things up. It's kind of whatever got screwed up during the first half of Mercury retrograde kind of gets reevaluated and now has to be dealt with. So that's what Cassimi means, or going into the eye of the sun. And that all happens right on a full moon. Very, very powerful energies this month. And I would also like to say positive things too about Mars going direct. And that is, for our energy, for each one of us, Mars will be in a different house. And Mars really rules drive and energy. So we all might feel a little more hurrah as it gets going, unless, of course, it's in your 12th or 8th house. But that always tends to pick up energy. Things start to take on. And that concerns me a little bit, too, about the Putin situation over in Ukraine, because clearly we're seeing more money and more sophisticated weapons be poured into Ukraine, and there's clearly a digging in of the heels on both sides. So this thing looks like it's going to continue on for a while. I hope I'm wrong about that, but it really does. And again, if you're an arms manufacturer, you're happy about that. If you're a poor civilian getting blown to pieces and watching your family get destroyed, I guess you're not too happy about that. I know I wouldn't be. So anyways, the bottom line is we've got a lot of stuff happening up this month. And here's the biggest thing about Elon Musk. I'm going to jump online here and share the screen. This is Elon Musk's chart. And this Mars, you can actually see right up here at the very top of the screen. I'll put a little spotlight pen on it. And that is Mars right there. For anybody who doesn't know the glyph of Mars, that's Mars. And notice the little RX there means it's retrograde. Well, it's going retrograde in Elon's 12th house, and I know he's worried about getting murdered. But I would tell you that the chart doesn't really look like that. It does look like it's an intense time for him. He's got Saturn over his Mars and all that, but I would say it doesn't look like he's going to get murdered. Let's hope not. But I would tell you that what is important here, and I'm going to put up a time tool, you're going to notice right here 10 days from now, on January 12th, Mars goes direct. And what you're going to see here, you see the dates ratcheting up right there. And you're going to notice that little RX disappear, which just simply means the planet has gone direct. Well, here's when Elon might be taking a lot of action here with more stuff on Twitter coming out even more this month, because as it goes forward, you're going to see in March, right in the latter part of March, you're going to see, of course, now I'm into February, right? And you can see in March, Mars is going to go over his ascendant, his Mercury and his Mars. So that's very powerful. That brings a whole new kind of extroverted energy that's coming out. And by the way, that's also going to be happening on the United States chart too. So again, we're about to see some pretty big action here happening all through January, February, March, and April. This whole spring ought to be a really activated time overall, because Mars, A, going direct, and B, going over the United States air trine, which hits all that activation. And also what I needed to mention as well is Saturn is now direct and about to go over the United States moon literally on the 17th of January, which is that's a day before Mercury goes direct. And people say, well, what does that mean? Because I know that's what I'd say. So the bottom line is that's a couple of powerful energies, because right there on the 17th, Mercury goes direct. Well, on the 18th, Mercury will go direct fully. And on the 17th, the day before, Saturn goes right over the United States moon. So very, very, very powerful time here. So,
Well, with Elon Musk, remember the other day we were just talking about him, and I had asked you if, maybe we could look at this. We haven't yet, but just wondering if he's in the fold somehow, because it's pretty astonishing what he's been able to expose. And one has to wonder,
I'm really glad you brought that up. Well, there's a lot of theories that Elon Musk, a lot of people don't know this. I didn't know until I did a lot of research. He owns one of the largest underground tunneling companies in the world. And this is all stuff the U.S. government and military has been using. Elon Musk was probably one of the biggest beneficiaries of Department of Defense contracts for a long, long time. So he's not just owning Tesla. He's really into a lot of very profitable businesses, particularly that underground tunneling company. So this is interesting stuff, because I'm not saying the DOD would have funded him, but remember I said back in one of our earlier videos, we are witnessing the clash of the titans here between the nationalists and the globalists. Again, against nationalism and you could say freedom and fascism. So I think Elon, and I looked into this through an interrogation, and I actually have that right here. I actually think he is backed by some, you could say, constituent that's very powerful. I'm not saying it's the government or the DOD, but I know there's a lot of people banding together who actually love their children too, who don't want to see fascism, communism, and socialism totally take over the United States like it's getting pretty close to doing. And I think some of this exposure is really bringing out some powerful stuff. And, I want to put on the screen a man that everyone should be aware of. His name was Thomas Paine. And Thomas Paine was actually born in the early 1700s. He was actually brought over to the United States. Benjamin Franklin and the founding fathers had a lot to do with this. Thomas Paine was a really well-known kind of theologist, if you will. There's many different names for him. But he basically wrote a book or a paper called Common Sense. And it was interesting. I read into the history of this, and like 16 magazines had failed in the colonies. And I think there was like 3 or 4 million people in the colonies at that time when the United States was being formed, or you could say the Revolutionary War was being declared and the Declaration of Independence was being signed. So one of the things that's parallel to this is very similar to now is the general populace was a bit oblivious to just how bad they were getting screwed with all the taxes. They knew about the taxes for sure, but they were really, I think, oblivious to how much force the crown was putting on all the colonists at that time. Just like right now, we see petrochemicals being shut down, the whole climate change ruse, and so many other things that are being pushed on us, COVID, etc. And people are really getting fed up. Well, in a parallel, Elon Musk is kind of a modern day Thomas Paine. And nobody works alone. Everybody does something with, a lot of support, or they don't get anywhere. And I think Elon Musk has been supported and to bring out this whole Twitter thing behind the scenes. We're not going to know who this is, just like we don't know who's really printing the money behind the Fed and creating all this stuff. But I think it's very similar. And I always say that Elon Musk seems to be paralleling this whole situation. That's what came to my mind when I looked at this. He's like a modern day Thomas Paine. And again, common sense came out in this magazine. All these other magazines had failed. And then I guess Thomas Paine came over and was so sick he had to be carried off the ship. He was very sick with flu, and I guess the ship had bad water, because remember back then you sailed, right, with the wind. And he was brought back to health, and then he helped this gentleman get a paper going, and then they printed thousands and thousands of copies of this book, Common Sense. And I forget how many were published, but I think a total of about 500,000 copies were sold. And of course, back then, that's the only way you got news, was either sitting around the campfire or you got a paper and read it, right? So again, if you look at the parallels today, Elon Musk purchases probably one of the largest, social media platforms, which is often likened to the town square. And he's exposing all this stuff. And people are going, well, we knew they were lying to us, but now we know they're lying to us, right? So I want to jump in here and do a recap. It's really important, I think, to drive home the details of what I'm saying here. I know astrology is a little bit complex, but if you stick with me here, this will make a lot of sense. We have Mars about ready to go direct. Okay, that's happening just after the full moon. We've got Mercury going into the sun between now and the 7th, right? A lot of powerful energies. All this is happening while the United States is making a big transition here with the Senate and the House and all that. So here's the point. And this is why I emphasize how dangerous this time is. I think a lot of information is going to start pouring out, especially because the blessing of the Nadi progression of Jupiter starts somewhere between the 1st and 2nd week of January, probably right around the 4th to the 7th. This is all when this energy happens. Moreover, we've got the Neptune square Mars, the energy that just happened before the Civil War 180 years ago. So this is a cocktail. It's so powerful. Plus, you've got Saturn transiting over the United States moon called Sati. Again, this is likely to bring untold energies on this country. Now, that's going to affect the rest of the world in one direct or indirect way or another. So a lot of stuff here going on. Also, this is all happening in the backdrop of the Pluto return on the United States, which has never happened before. Remember, that destroyed or broke up the Roman Empire the first time it hit, and it completely dissolved it on the second hit. So these are unprecedented energies. And I think with this information that could be exposed. And I want to mention the border. We have not been told all the stuff that's really going on with the border. And I think there are terrorist groups that have been coming in here. And I think there's a lot of things planned. If information comes out strong enough, we're going to see terrorism be unleashed on these cities. And I have to say, this is the symbolism of the Mars conjuncting the moon this fall, late fall in this country. And I am very concerned about that because I've never seen that happen before. These aspects only happen once every 360 years. This country is 246 years old. You see, so I'm not trying to create alarm here, but I'm also trying to say these have never happened. All these confluences of energy have never happened quite like they are lining up this year. So this is exceedingly powerful stuff. And remember, in 2024, we'll be talking a lot more about this stuff as it develops in the future. But we have the planet of karma, Saturn, conjuncting Mars, the planet of war in the United States chart, all coming up in 2024. So I remain positive because of the Jupiter blessing, because the good always wins. But I'm also going to emphasize this is not going to be an easy road according to the astrology.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's interesting to look at this so closely because history does repeat itself, right? Over and over and over again. It doesn't matter how much we evolve. It seems like history just keeps repeating itself. And wouldn't it? Because the nefesh is always active.
Yeah, well, it's always the lower ego, you bet.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I really have to say there's a lot of elements here of demonic energy, and it's always there. You always have the good and evil battling here. And the celestial heavens, which we would call, the astronomy and astrology, is certainly mirroring this. There's never been a time when the United States has been in such powerful grips of transformative energy. It's either going to be destroyed as we know it and be this phoenix rising out of the ashes, or we're going to end up in socialism and communism, and where we're really, in my opinion, heading that way. All the symbolism in the chart shows that unless it's headed off. Well, again, if it wasn't for Thomas Paine, I don't think the colonists would have ever rallied the common people behind the effort that had happened. And I also want to quote the French here too. The French were so involved in supporting the entire effort of freedom in the Constitution. Not only did they send us the Statue of Liberty, which still stands in the New York Harbor, and of course Ellis Island, and you remember that, Ella. You used to live there, right by it. But it's an amazing sight, and it also is a symbolism of freedom. And I don't think there's ever been a time where the United States is under as much attack from within, from so many angles. And this was all shown by the 2020 energies of the Saturn-Pluto and the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction that came in, right? All during 2020. We got one in the beginning, which was COVID, the Saturn-Pluto, and we got the other one at the bookend with the elections and all the stuff that had happened with the 240-year Jupiter-Saturn conjunction.
Well, you did say that 2023 and 24 were years to look out for.
Going to make or break for this country in a lot of ways. It really is.
Yeah.
It really, truly is.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that update. We just wanted to give kind of a light update and to say Happy New Year and to cover Mars, Mercury, and Musk. so yeah, this is great. This is great.
I think he's going to be coming out with a lot more. I really do.
Oh, I bet. I bet. Yeah. Thanks so much, Jeff. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Thanks so much.
For listening.
See you real soon.